I, Nabuchodonosor, praise and extol and honor the King of the skies, for all his works are truth, and his ways justice, and those that walk in pride he is able to abase. Daniel, chapter 5. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which Nabuchodonosor his father had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his lords, his women and his concubines might drink therefrom. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of the God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his women and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine, and praised the gods of the gold, and of the silver, of the copper, of the iron, of the wood, and of the stone. In that same hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand, and wrote opposite the lampstand upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's brightness was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, and the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. The king cried aloud to bring in the enchanters, the Kashdim, and the soothsayers. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babel, Whosoever shall read this writing, and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his brightness was changed upon him, and his lords were perplexed. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. The queen spoke and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy brightness be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom, in whom is a spirit of holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like wisdom of gods, were found in him. And the king Nabuchodonosor, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made him master of the magicians, enchanters, Kashdim, and soothsayers. Forasmuch as an excellent spirit, and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams, and showing of dark sentences, and dissolving of doubts, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Then was Daniel brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, Art thou Daniel, who art of the children of the captivity of Yehudah, whom the king my father brought out of Yehudah? I have heard of thee that a spirit of gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in thee. And now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof. But they could not show the interpretation of the thing. But I have heard of thee that thou canst give interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with purple, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king, and make known to him the interpretation. O thou king, the Most High God gave Nabuchodonosor thy father the kingdom, and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he slew, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he raised up, and whom he would he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of the skies, until he knew that the Most High God ruleth in the kingdom of men, and that he setteth up over it whomsoever he will. And thou his son, O Belteshazzar, hast not humbled thy heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of the skies, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy women and thy concubines, have drunk wine from them, and thou hast praised the gods of the silver and the gold, of the copper, the iron, the wood, and the stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified? Then was the part of the hand sent from before him, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, mene, tekel uparsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, the God hath numbered thy kingdom, and brought it to an end. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances, and art found lacking. Pares, thy kingdom is divided, and given to the Madai and Paras. Then commanded Belteshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with purple, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night Belteshazzar the Kashdi king was slain.